Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take this time to introduce you to one of my favorite books, The Science in Science Fiction, edited by Peter Nichols. This book came out in 1982. I have owned it for approximately 30 years, so I'm going to date myself a little bit there. This is basically a well-illustrated coffee table book. It's not so technical that you can't understand it. It's just done in layman's terms. I'm going to give you a few examples here of what you're going to find. Here we're talking about distance and time. The best rockets we have are going to shove something towards the nearest star, but will take a good 80,000 years to get there. There is our sun. Here is the nearest solar system, Proxima Centauri and Alpha Centauri A and B, and 80,000 years with our best rockets. This might be changeable. We have examples of chemical rockets, nuclear rockets, ion rockets. Here we have a laser-pushed light sail. This is a very large structure, but right now there is a project in studies called Starshot. And the idea would be to, instead of make such a large sail, you make a bunch of really small ones, like my hand or smaller, and you hit it with a powerful laser. The acceleration on them will be tremendous, and you're talking decades to get to the nearest star rather than 80,000 years. We are going to move on to this page. This is an example of a ram scoop starship, which would project a large magnetic field ahead of it to suck in hydrogen and then fuse it and shoot it out the back for propulsion. This was thought to be the number one way we were going to get around the galaxy, but the problem was too much stuff would get conglomerated in front and just wind up being more of a brake than a propulsion system. So technically speaking, this doesn't quite work yet, but people still like to work on this particular problem here. We are going to shoot forward to page 18. Space arcs. This has been asked, if there are anything in the galaxy like us, why haven't they arrived yet? And one simple answer to that could be that we're the only ones in the galaxy, or they're very rare and very far away, regardless if they can go slower than light or faster than light. The idea here is environments that you can bring with you. This particular, give you a little bit of a close-up here. This particular image came out in the 70s. This shows the insides of that structure there. People joked that this was basically shopping malls in space, but what else are you going to put in a space colony? You want to be comfortable and bring our environment with us. That's what that would be for. We're going to shoot forward here to page 45. Dyson spheres, or more accurately, Dyson swarms. So here you have the sun, and out to the orbit of the Earth, a shell that would collect all the energy it emits, increasing the amount of energy we could use a few billion times over. The only problem is we wouldn't make a solid structure, although I think there was an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation that used a solid structure. This would be more accurately called a Dyson swarm, so you get something like the arcs, the space colonies that we looked at before, surrounding this in a swarm and gathering all that energy. In searching for such things in our galaxy, astronomers want to look for infrared sources, as all the energy is captured, but it still would radiate heat. And so you get a high infrared source with a little of everything else, and you have a possibility of a Dyson swarm. In the 90s, there was a fellow by the name of Robert Bradbury, and not Ray Bradbury, the author. It's Robert Bradbury. And he thought up what he called Matryoshka brains, which would be a Dyson sphere that can think. It was, of course, done again in a cloud, but in layers, and each layer would absorb more and more of that infrared energy. So by the time you get out to the outer orbits of our own solar system, say, we would be just as invisible as the rest of the background radiation being emitted. So you could potentially hide that way if need be. I'm going to put a link in the description for Matryoshka brains. And what you'll get out of that is, for example, the ability to process the entire history of human thought in a few millionths of a second. This is very smart compared to us. This is a greater difference of them to us as us to a zygote. We are going to go to page 68, I think. What do we got there? So relativity, the quickest explanation is that the more energy you put into something, the more we're going to measure its clocks running slower. So if I'm sitting here with you and you zip off to the nearest star at 99% of the speed of light, as far as I'm concerned, you're going to take a bit shy of 9 years to get there and back. But according to your clocks, you're only going to experience something like 6 months to a year. And your view of time, your actual passage of time, is just as legitimate as mine. So you will only age 6 months to a year, where I age the full 8 to 9 years. That's about the simplest explanation I can give. There is... I'm going to go a little bit ahead. This was a piece of a show called Einstein's Universe, which actually explains that. You can watch it free on streaming. It's an older show, but most of the information still holds up for the most part. I wanted to quickly mention antimatter. That's a big deal in science fiction. Just to give you a little hint, 1 kilogram of antimatter hits 1 kilogram of matter, and you get a 43 megaton explosion. The largest explosion on the planet so far has been the Tsar bomb, which was 59 megatons. We are going to go to page 125, and we see someone trying to predict what our internet's going to look like. Personally, I like my desktop better. We are going to pop to one of my favorite little subjects in the world. Life extension, getting old. Right now, the nearest potentially human trial is actually a mouse experiment run by Aubrey de Grey, and it is a multi-pronged approach to do everything from removing zombie cells from your body to lengthening your telomeres. And I believe he has phase 1 done and is looking for funding for phase 2. And beyond that, you're looking at any kind of direct... In fact, one lead researcher seems to think now we can do it very chemically and might even be able to do it in a single pill, but a lot of other researchers laugh at that. But funding is coming in well now. It used to be really just joked about as completely impossible, but now it's starting to look more and more serious, and I suspect that if you are still alive in, say, 10 to 15 years, you are probably going to have death be an option for you if you so choose. A lot of people have problems with life extension. They don't like it. I think you're supposed to die, or you can't do this until you cure malaria. You have to feed all the starving people of the planet, or you'll get bored and you'll die. And I scoff at all of it. I don't know what would bore me so much that I'd want to pass along. As far as overpopulation goes, or not being able to feed people, right now you already have indoor vertical farming, for example, that uses over 90% less space and 90% less water and does not require the sun or soil in order to grow crops. And so that's probably the biggest solution I can think of if you're worried about overpopulation. Another one is it'll only be for the rich, but every researcher in the field, they tell you flat out they want to sell it to the masses for as cheap as they can get it. They won't hold it back, only for the rich of the world. We are going to go to one last bit here. We're going to get into just a bit of pseudoscience and telepathy. The best thing I can mention here is back in the 90s, there was a very good UFO special where a photographer, he's a professional photographer, had a hobby of analyzing UFO photos. And at the time, I think he had analyzed 10,000 of them. He dismissed all but 3, and the only reason he couldn't dismiss the 3 is because the picture quality was so bad. But everything else was a hat, a hubcap, a frisbee, something on a pole, something on a string, something somebody threw, something somebody was holding. He could dismiss all of it. Even now recently there was a batch of military videos, and everyone claimed these were, absolute proof of UFOs, until a bunch of professional photographers and professional effects artists jumped on YouTube and did video after video showing, no, this is just really bad photography. So people want to believe what they want to believe. But I actually think a book like this, if you turn it into a textbook, questions after each chapter, a test at the end, and maybe introduced it around junior high school or something as a semester, you'd probably have a lot more critical thinking skills. I think this would just be something good for everybody. And that's just about it for this, the science and science fiction. The next video I might attempt is a bunch of hard science fiction recommendations. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.